Since I can remember, the world around me was filled with darkness. The only light in my life was my childhood friend, John. John, who lived next door and was the same age as me, had been my friend since before we started kindergarten. Even at the local park, no one ever approached me, but John would always came up to me without a care in the world and played with me. Even when my mom warned against it, thinking it might be dangerous, John would put me on the swing and pushed me down the slide. John was the only one who treated me just like any other kid. Even my own parents seemed somewhat hesitant with me, but to John, the fact that I was blind didn't matter. That meant the world to me. Through elementary, middle, and high school, I attended a school for the blind, while John went to a public school, but our bond never wavered. John, who was good with computers since we were kids, taught me how to type. Every single day, John taught me diligently and patiently. One day, I asked him, "Why do you do so much for me?" Without hesitation, John replied, "What? We're pals, ain't we? It's what friends do."
I like being with you. You're the most fun to be around. We're best buds, right?
There wasn't a hint of falsehood in his voice. Being blind, my hearing was many times sharper than that of others.
You see, with typing, you gotta learn to do it without looking at the keys. It doesn't matter if you can't see, it's all the same. Someday, this skill's gonna be useful for you.
I still remember feeling like I was on the verge of tears when I heard those words. I never cursed God for taking away my sight because He gave me John. John was the sun that lit up my world. Time passed, and now at 27, I work as a web writer. The typing skills John taught me became top-notch by the time I was in middle school, and that's why I can stand on my own 2 feet now. Being a big fan of watching movies and TV series with audio descriptions also helped. At 20, I won a small prize for a novel I submitted online, and now I have a decent income. I still live with my parents, but John lives alone in a small apartment. John, who is thriving as a programmer, met a woman named Lana Davis at a client's company. They continued to date and are finally getting married this month. I heard about it while drinking at John's apartment, and I was overjoyed as if it was about me. I kept saying congratulations, and John said, "So, I have a favor to ask, Mike." Of course, I intended to accept any request, so I nodded strongly.
Could you give the best man speech? Come on, you're a pro writer, right? I need something touching.
But, I hesitated. Lana, John's girlfriend, is the daughter of the president of the client company where John works. I heard Lana's parents were opposed to her marrying John, a regular guy, till the end. If I, being disabled, were to represent as his best friend, wouldn't it tarnish John's image? As if hearing my thoughts, John said, "Don't worry about silly things.
You're my pride and joy, Mike." Lana also said she wanted you to speak. You got it?
John's tone was sincere. I could tell he meant it from the bottom of his heart. All I could do was nod. Now that it's come to this, I decided to give a speech that would touch hearts. From that day, I kept pondering on what to say in the speech. Before I knew it, the day of the wedding arrived. Due to my nerves, I barely slept and got into the car. My mom, who was driving, said with a laugh, "It's not like you're the one getting married. You know, we arrived at the venue earlier than expected." As I was getting out of the car with my mom's help, a young man's voice said, "Mr. Smith, I'm Wilson, assistanting today's party. Pleasure to meet you." I replied, "Thank you," and Mr. Wilson discreetly took my hand. I bet John arranged this for me. He's always been such a considerate guy.
We have about 2 hours before the ceremony. Would you like to wait in the lobby?
I felt like breathing in some fresh air. I recalled this venue had a beautiful garden. If there's a place to sit in the garden, I'd like to go. Of course, said Mr. Wilson, taking my hand and starting to walk slowly. After a while, he sat me down on a bench. I felt the warmth of the sun on my shoulders and back, and it felt good. I'll be sitting here for a while, I said, and Mr. Wilson replied, I'll come back for you later, and then left. I rehearsed my speech inside of my head. After going over it a few times, I found myself saying it out loud. Practicing a speech. Someone asked, "Oh, yes, was I speaking aloud? How embarrassing." Then the person laughed and said, "I get it. Nervous, huh?" and seemed to sit down next to me.
Is the person getting married a friend of yours?
Yes, a childhood friend. Well, congratulations. The voice sounded like an older man's. From his voice, I could imagine a very calm person. He's an amazing guy. To me, he's like a beacon in my life. I couldn't help but say it. I was so happy about today, I felt elated.
That's wonderful. Please, tell me more.
There was no diplomatic remarks in the man's voice. Talking about John made me happy, and I found myself smiling. You see, I'm blind, but John never treated me differently. I think it was in elementary school. We got into a fight, and he really punched me. I was mad and punched him back. It was my first time getting into a physical fight because nobody ever tried to pick one with me. Remembering that time, I unconsciously touched my cheek. Never been punched by anyone before, John's punch was a real shocker for me. Yet, that punch was proof that John didn't see me as anything special. He wanted to introduce his girlfriend, so we met at a station. John took my hand and led me to the restaurant where she was waiting, and she was surprised to see us holding hands. John hadn't told her about my blindness. He said he forgot about it since he never really considered me as blind. He genuinely felt that way. Thinking about it warmed my heart. John was always like that. He always looked straight at the real me. He truly is a gift from God to me. I want him to be happy, always. I suddenly paused. Sorry, I just went on and on to a total stranger.
No worries, it was a delightful story. You're talking about your friend John, right?
There was a hint of confusion in the man's voice, which I found odd. But it didn't seem like he was bored or annoyed. Why does he seem puzzled? Are you here for someone's wedding too? When I asked, the man ambiguously replied, yeah, sort of. Just as I was about to ask who, Mr. Wilson came to fetch me. The man said, see you later, and left. See you later. Could he be here for John's wedding? That's what I thought as Mr. Wilson led me away. The ceremony went on without a hitch. Thanks to Mr. Wilson, I was able to relax and fully enjoy the ambience and the food. Lana must look absolutely stunning in her bridal gown. I've met Lana a few times. She's a down-to-earth woman, much like John. Judging by her voice, she must be a striking beauty.
Now, representing the groom's friends, we'd like to invite Mr. Mike Smith to say a few words.
Here it comes. I thought and quickly stood up. Mr. Wilson guided me to the podium's microphone. With my heart racing, I took it one step at a time. Mr. Wilson stopped and positioned me in front of the microphone. But I accidentally kicked something over. There was a loud thud as the microphone fell. The quiet atmosphere of the venue hit me, and I quickly bent down to pick it up. You're okay, Mr. Wilson whispered. He seemed to have reset the microphone for me and gently pushed me into the right position. I had completely forgotten what I was going to say. I could feel all eyes on me as I struggled to find words. Just wanted to say, "Congratulations," I began, but then I heard a sarcastic man's voice saying, "Is your best man disabled? Seems like John doesn't have any decent friends." I was taken aback and turned towards the source of the voice.
After hearing about the great love story that led to your marriage, maybe you should reconsider, Lana. Any man who'd let someone with a disability stand at the altar on the bride's most important day doesn't truly care about you.
I felt like I'd been punched in the heart. It was my fault that John was being humiliated. The more I panicked to respond, the harder it was to find words.
Why don't you step down from there, young man? Not only can you not see, but it seems you can't speak either. You're an eyesore at such a grand event.
The man said the last bit with a mocking laugh. From his voice, it sounded like he'd had quite a bit to drink. The room became silent, and I felt so ashamed that I was on the verge of tears. Then, I heard someone shout, "Enough!" The sound of footsteps approaching and getting closer to me. The footsteps stopped at me, and a calm male voice said, "I'm sorry, can I borrow the microphone for a moment?" It was the voice of the man who had listened to my story in the garden. "Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for the interruption. I am Lana's father. Please forgive my intrusion, but may I have a moment to speak?" The man gently placed a hand on my back.
Earlier, I had the chance to speak with Mike. He described John as the light of his life, a gift from God. I had opposed Lana's marriage to such person.
Lana's father's voice trembled with emotion.
The rude man you heard earlier is the son of my business associate. I had hoped for Lana to marry him, believing he was a successful man. I thought a marriage with a future CEO like him would bring Lana happiness. But after hearing his comments, I realize how misguided I've been.
He paused before saying, "John,
I admit I didn't know much about you. After hearing how deeply Mike cares for you, I felt ashamed. Please, take good care of Lana."
He then continued, addressing Lana.
"You were right. I'm sure John will make you happy. Let me say it once more. Congratulations from your dad."
Lana's voice broke with emotion. "Dad." A loud noise rang out, followed by rapid footsteps and the sound of a door slamming. It was probably that man leaving the venue.
"We'd like to hear Mike's speech. Please go ahead."
Lana's father gave me a light pat on my back. I heard applause from the audience. I nodded slightly, took a deep breath, and began my speech. The ceremony went off without further trouble. 1 week later, John said to me, "I have a letter for Mike. Mind if I read it?" I nodded, wondering who it was from. It was an apology from the man who had spouted off at the wedding.
I was in love with Lana. Out of petty jealousy, I ruined such a special day. After I left the venue, I heard Mike's speech outside the door. While listening, I felt incredibly embarrassed. It seems I've been blind to my own feelings.
The heartfelt apology in the letter was enough to forgive him.
I hope we can meet again someday and have a long talk. I'm truly sorry for what happened.
After handing me the letter that concluded as such, I carefully tucked it into my breast pocket.
He gave Lana and me a letter as well. Thanks, Mike.
I was taken aback by the sudden gratitude. I didn't do anything.
Your speech moved me, Mike. I bet it moved that guy too. You really are something else. I'm proud to call you my friend.
Hearing this, I felt both embarrassed and happy and looked down.
Why don't you come over for dinner sometime? Lana wants to chat with you. Even Lana's parents want to invite you over for a meal. Maybe they like you more than they like me?
He laughed as he gave my back a couple of hearty slaps. "Stop talking nonsense," I replied, playfully punching John in the stomach. I was truly happy. The world is filled with all kinds of light. With John as my guiding star,